I was hoping I wouldn't have to make this video this early in the season, but here we are, talking about the New Orleans Pelicans again. Did quite a lot of that in the offseason. Made a video just about a week ago talking about how I was starting to get a little bit concerned about this Pelicans team, and well, concerns have been justified so far because it is the worst possible start. An 0-3 start. Well, I guess it could be worse if an injury happened to someone else. They did lose Josh Hart, but okay, we're not going to worry about that. It is a bad start. It's an 0-3 start. The first two games you can kind of excuse. Should have been more competitive. They were competitive at times against the 76ers. The Bulls was a game to forget, but those are two teams that have looked good. Well, the 76ers are a top seed and the Bulls have looked good so far, but you can't be losing all three games and a game to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So that is rough. That is a tough start. Now, this video isn't going to be completely bashing the Pelicans and saying their season's over before it's even begun because, okay, let's hold back on that. There is still a chance for them to bring this season back, but there are some definite concerns about this team. Where is Zion? We don't even know where he is. That's the biggest concern. That's the one thing where it could be a positive or it could be an absolute negative. Because if he comes back within the next couple of games, then all of a sudden I still have enough hope this team can turn it around if he is healthy. But if he doesn't come back for another 2 to 3 weeks, the season might be over. I'm sorry. I think the season will probably be over if he doesn't come back for another 2 to 3 weeks because I just don't see how this team is good enough without Zion. And that is a concern in itself, but yeah, let's talk about it, okay? Now, before I go any further, if you could drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, that would be much appreciated. But if we're just going to start with the negatives, it's just the same old Pelicans, unfortunately, where they've continued to find ways to beat themselves. 30 turnovers against the Minnesota Timberwolves. 3-0, 30 turnovers. That's insane. That is insane. I think it was a franchise record, I believe, or it's thereabouts. Well, that's a way to beat yourself. 30 turnovers will do it. In a game where the other team only scored, 96 to 90 points? That's ridiculous. That is so ridiculous. You then had game 1 against the 76ers where you have Valanciunas. We're not going to put all the blame on him, but you have your center, someone who's supposed to be one of your most reliable scorers and a very efficient scorer who has looked good in the last 2 games. So again, I'm not putting all the blame on him, but 3 of 19 for your center. That's rough. Someone who is supposed to be an offensive-minded center as well. So that's another way in which the Pelicans, that's a bit of an outlier. And then against the Chicago Bulls, if you're looking at more ways in which they've found ways to lose, well, they really struggled off the bench. And let's start with the bench because that's probably been the thing that has stuck out the most, the lack of bench quality. Some of that comes from the fact that you have Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Devontae Graham both having to start. Josh Hart is now out as well, which again just amplifies all of these issues. But there have been some disappointments. I thought Satoransky could be alright. I wasn't exactly getting crazy over Satoransky. I was like, oh my god, Thomas Satoransky. But I thought he could be solid. He has been solid for a few years in the NBA, and well, he hasn't done anything. He's out of the rotation now. Herb Jones has been good, so there's a positive if we want to get a positive in with the negatives, but sticking on this negative kind of notion, before we get into some of the positives, there's a few, believe it or not, but yes, if we're looking at the bench, it's been a struggle. Kyra Lewis, he's not there yet, which I don't think that's room for concern, but unfortunately, when you don't have Zion and you don't have Josh Hart, all of a sudden a little bit more goes on to Kyra Lewis. I know different positions, but in terms of him being someone that should be a little bit further along than he is, but that's fine. Jackson Hayes, that's more disappointing for me. 3rd year, I thought he would take a leap. He's actually gone down production-wise. Maybe it's just a slow start to the season, but in my eyes, he was supposed to be the perfect kind of replacement for Valanciunas in terms of the perfect complement. You have Valanciunas, who, apart from that first game, which I talked about, has been really steady. He's done what Valanciunas is going to do. He's going to crash the boards. He's going to be a beast offensively and hopefully stretch the floor a little bit more going forward. I think they'll worry about that more so when Zion gets back and they actually need him to stretch the floor. But you've got what Valanciunas has been as advertised. We know what he's going to be. He's locked in. That's fine. But Jackson Hayes is supposed to be someone that provides a little bit more athleticism, more of a spark, more of a pick and roll, or a lob threat, should I say. He's supposed to provide something different, some verticality, some rim protection, and at the moment, he's not really providing anything. Some people want Hernan Gomez to take some of those minutes, which in fairness, last year at times Hernan Gomez wasn't that bad, but you're drafting Jackson Hayes to be in his 3rd year better than what he has been so far. And I thought he was going to take a leap. As of right now, I'm wrong with that. But yeah, that's been disappointing. That's probably been the most disappointing part of the bench so far. You look at other guys, there just hasn't been that spark. That's where it does come down to through committee, I guess, when you have Zion come back and you have a little bit more scoring in the starting lineup. Maybe Nickeil Alexander-Walker can go to the bench and then all of a sudden you can get that spark plug, because Nickeil at the moment I'd say is still best suited for that six-man role because of exactly how he plays. He's not the most suited to be an off-ball player because, well, he likes to create his own shot. He can create his own shot. He had a night against the Timberwolves, which was one to forget. 6 of 23, 3 of 13 from 3. I don't know. They were bad numbers. They were bad. Willie Green said at least he was continuing to take shots. That's something. I don't know if I'd take that as a positive, but I guess he does have confidence. We've seen that in his first 3 years. There's absolutely no doubts about his confidence. Sometimes you might want to just put that down a bit. Just get Brandon Ingram a few more shots, because as good as Alexander Walker can be at creating his own shot, I don't want to see 23 of them when he's shooting 25%. But if you're looking at someone who could be that spark plug for a bench unit that has been abysmal so far, it could be Nickeil going back to the bench and having someone else step in for his starting spot. But Herb Jones, who has stepped in the absence of Josh Hart, if we're looking at some silver linings, he's been good. He provides what you want in this Pelicans team. Defensive energy, attacking the boards, hustling. That's what you want. This Pelicans team, I don't doubt the offense, even though they've been a bottom 5 ranked offense through 3 games, which is kind of crazy to think, because if you look at last year, when Zion was healthy in the 61 games he played, they were the 8th ranked offense. So if you want to question his impact, you've got it right there. He will make up for a lot of this mess. He spent a lot of time with the second unit last year, but you can still look for ways to improve while he's not here. Brandon Ingram, as well, another silver lining. He's looked better than last season. He's been more efficient. He's been attacking the rim more, and he's just done everything at a higher level. He seems to be reading the game well. He's always been a good playmaker, but he's still doing that. He did turn over the ball a few more times than he would have hoped for against the Timberwolves, which everyone did, so you can't really put that on Ingram. They had 30 turnovers, but you still do see the potential between Ingram and Zion. Maybe they're not the most perfect fit, but I still believe there's definite room to see them as a good fit. Devontae Graham, like Alexander Walker, didn't have the best game against the Timberwolves, but you're still seeing what Graham is, and I believe he is a great fit alongside Zion Williamson in terms of his three-point threat, his pick-and-roll threat. He makes sense, and he's looked solid so far. Again, there have been some positives for the Pelicans, but you can't just be looking at all these minor positives and saying, oh, well, if that works, we do have to look at the bigger picture, and unfortunately, it's a bad start. 0-3. The next 3 games could definitely determine this season. Without trying to sound over-dramatic, I do believe the next 3 games will determine the season. You're 0-3, you lost to the 76ers and the Bulls. Okay, we can excuse that Timberwolves loss. Okay. But now the next 3 games, probably without Zion, I would imagine, Timberwolves, Hawks, and Kings. 2 of those 3 teams did not make the playoffs last year. You just came close to beating the Timberwolves, even though you had 30 turnovers. There's definite reason to believe you can beat the Timberwolves. The Kings, although they might be improved, you've got to be beating these teams. Whether these teams have improved, which I believe pretty much every team in the NBA has to some degree, you've got to win 2 of the next 3 games. Even if you lose to the Kings, it doesn't matter. Beat the Hawks, but you can't start the season 1-5 with 3 of those games being against the Timberwolves, and the Kings. Then all of a sudden the season could be in tatters. But until then, we're still going to look at some of the positives. Some of the positives have come in the form of Brandon Ingram. Don't know how good Willie Green is coaching yet. It's still too early to kind of judge what he's done as a coach, so I'm not really going to say anything of that nature, particularly without his best player. But the Pelicans, some of those issues will definitely be sorted. They've looked okay defensively. I don't think they've been too bad. They've looked a little bit improved from last season. You've got guys who have been active in the half court. They've been pretty solid. Brandon Ingram said he was pretty happy with that, which is cool. But the offense is going to need to get going. And you can't just wait for Zion to do that. You're probably going to need Nickeil Alexander-Walker to be a little bit more consistent. Valentine has looked better. Jackson Hayes is going to have to provide something. Or you're going to have to bring in Willie Hernan-Gomez, which is uninspiring, but it might be the move to make. Look, it's not the most positive video to make, and that's not something I was looking forward to making, but unfortunately, as someone who was very high on the Pelicans and still do have some hope for this team if Zion can get healthy, or even if they can figure it out before that happens, because there's been glimpses against the 76ers. They were competitive until they weren't. In simple terms, against the Timberwolves, if they didn't have 30 turnovers, they would have won that game. And against the Bulls, you have off nights. But all of a sudden, if you can turn it around in the next 3 games, which, as I mentioned, going to be probably the most important 3 games of the season, potentially. sounds very dramatic. I hate when people say that. But genuinely speaking, 0-3, 3 games, 2 of them against teams that didn't make the playoffs last year and were towards the bottom of the seedings. You got to win 2 of those next 3 games. Otherwise, you start 1-5 or 0-6, and then the season is probably over. Okay? So that's how dramatic it is. So I'm going to be dramatic. I'm going to be blunt. That's what needs to happen. The Pelicans can still turn it around. There's been some silver linings. Zion, get him in a cryotherapy's chamber and just leave him in there. Lock him in there until he's healthy and get him out in the next couple of weeks, because unless he gets healthy in the next few weeks, it could be a long season. But we're not giving up hope. Just thought I'd come on here and talk about the Pelicans because it has been disappointing, but I think Pelicans fans are somewhat used to it, which I feel bad for. But as a Pistons fan, I can also empathize. Well, I have lived that as well. So, we understand our pain. Anyways, have a nice day nonetheless.